Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sarirasya cha vaidyakena yopakurotam pravaram muninam padanjalim pranchaliranatosmi stuve padanjalim vyasam shankaram cha munitrayam katra sutrasya bhashyasya kramad vivaranasya cha. These sutras are very important from one perspective, especially it analyzes the mystery of human character, our emotions and feelings, and our temperament. So it has got far-reaching implications. The 7th Sutra of Kaivalyapada, Karma Ashukla Akrishnam Yoginaha. This is one part of the sutra. The second part is Trividham Idaresham. So this is the sutra together. So Karma Ashukla Akrishnam Yoginas Trividham Idaresham. The meaning is very simple. For yogis, there is one particular kind of temperament. And for ayogis, who are not yogis, who are not, in a broader sense, those who are not inclined to a spiritual way of life. That's a broader implication of the word ayogi. Somebody who is not a yogi. The temperaments are different. So first, yoginaha. Remember, many of the commentators, if you read the traditional commentaries, you can find yoginaha, means sannyasinaha. Very often yogi is equated with a sannyasi. Sannyasi technically means monk. So we should remember, it's a broader perspective, it means somebody who is taken to spiritual life. That's the implication. So now the meaning is this. The difference is that a yogi's vasana, samskaras and impulses do not bind him. And there is a reason for it. So the technical terms used are, the karmas or vasanas, samskaras, impulses, tendencies, feelings, etc. or activities and the results of a yogi, of a spiritual seeker, advanced spiritual seeker, is called Ashuklam and Akrishnam. So this is the word. It is both Ashukla and Akrishna. The translation Ashukla, it may means non-white, and Akrishna means non-black. So Shukla and Krishna are translated into white and black. Now this meaning is misleading, so we should understand it very, very clearly. Here, the point is, Shukla means punya, actions which are good, actions which are pure, and Krishna means actions which are impure. So, actually in Sanskrit, the Krishna could also mean cluttered, in a disorganized way. Krishna Yajurveda, Shukla Yajurveda. Yajurveda has two dimensions, two categories. Shukla Yajurveda, which belongs to the Yajnavalkya tradition, and Krishna Yajurveda, which belongs to Vaishambhayana, the original recension. So it is called Krishna Yajurveda because it is a bit disorganized, not very compact. Compared to that, Shukla Yajurveda is more compact in that sense. But here, the word is used in a different sense. What it means is, actions or the results, it's called in Sanskrit, it's called papa. Sometimes translations can be called evil, etc. I mean, suppose we have done something wrong which creates a lot of pains, sufferings to others. Vyasa will explain. It can cause certain samskaras, tendencies. And it's called Krishna. Suppose we do good to somebody, do some noble deed. It can create a positive, good impulse. It is called Shukla. Now, yogis' temperaments belong to neither Shukla category or Krishna category because he has transcended both. In our spiritual evolution, what happens is, first of all, we develop a lot of positive samskaras. That's the first step in spiritual life. That's why the first sutra of Sadhanapada is Tapaswadhyaya Ishvara Pradhananani Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga is the kindergarten into spiritual life. What does it mean? According to Vijnana Bhikshu and others, Kriya Yoga includes Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, whatever good deeds you do, whatever either by way of your own spiritual practice, your prayer, meditation, contemplation, all these, or some kind of noble, unselfish activity you do to others, Karma Yoga. All these can generate spiritual energies in your mind, in your character. So, the point is, those who belong to this category, those who have got a lot of positivity, the results of good actions, they mostly belong to the Tapaswadhyaya Shilaha. That's what Vyasa is going to tell you in the commentary. So, in other words, if you have got a lot of positive attitudes, positive tendencies, positive impressions, it is the result of some good deeds you have done in your life. Not necessarily physical deeds, but also can be good words you spoke to somebody which help somebody. The opposite, if you speak bad words, hurting somebody, it can create negativity, Krishna. So, yogis belong to a category which transcends both because they are completely exhausted the entire repository of karmas. They are transcended both. You have to transcend both Shukla and Krishna, both Punya and Papa, both good and bad, then only you can really become yogis. But the first step is to do a lot of good things and accumulate a lot of Punya, means spiritually meritorious karma phalas, tendencies, impressions. And that will suppress the effect of negativity, negative or the results of evil actions. And when you have a surplus of positive tendencies, the results of good actions, then only you will have an inclination to take to spiritual life. That's the real meaning of the word Atha Yoga Anushasana. The first sutra of Samadhipada is, now onwards we take to spiritual life. Unless we have some good quality, something good that we have done either in the past or maybe in this life, you cannot feel like taking to some higher spiritual values. You won't be able to tolerate, you won't be able to bear the good holy atmosphere of a holy place if your mind is not at all ready for it. If your mind is full of evil tendencies, we'll feel terribly restless when we are in the company of good people. And we feel very much home, we feel a lot of affinity, we feel very much at home in the company of undesirable people. Why? Because our tendencies, our mental vibrations are in tune with that. On the other hand, when we go to a good place, when we associate with good people, when we are in the company of holy persons, or when we read some good books, listen to great ideas, if you feel at home, if you feel a kind of inner harmony, it means we have a lot of good karmas in our account. So that good karma is called Shukla. And its opposite, bad karmas and the results are called Krishna. Yogis have to transcend both because yoga chitta vritti nirodhaka. Both good vrittis and bad vrittis, good samskaras and bad samskaras have to be transcended. You have to go beyond both. Then only you become a yogi. Because whatever he does, even his noble actions, he will do without any selfish motive. So he doesn't have any storehouse of punya bhalas, meritorious deeds, for him to enjoy. And of course, because he has completely freed himself from all kleshas, the avidya, raga, the dvesha, etc. So he is totally free from Krishna or negativity or papa. That's the idea behind. So this is with regard to yogis. So yogis have neither Shukla Phala or Krishna. He transcends both. That's why his karma is called Ashuklam and Akrishnam, means neither related to Papa nor related to Punya. He has transcended both. The highest spiritual state is reached when you transcend both good and bad. Because so if you are always obsessed with good only, then you are certainly advanced, but you have not reached perfection. You should be able to go beyond both. Then only when you reach perfection, that's the state of yoga. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. That is the definition of yoga. It comes in the Samadhipada at the beginning. Now, Itaresham and others, what about others? What about the people who don't take to yoga life? For them, Trividham means threefold. For others, these karma or vasana, samskaras are threefold. What are they? Shuklam, Krishnam, Shukla Krishnam. These are the three samskaras, three types of vasanas, three types of tendencies and impressions that characterize people who don't take to yoga life. Now, this also needs explanation. First of all, Shukla karma means, Shukla vasana means the results of tapa, mental purity, prayers, austerities, reading holy books, doing karma yoga, practicing selflessness, doing everything with a sense of surrender to God's will. That practice, it is called Kriya Yoga, defined in the first sutra of Sadhanapada, Tapaswadhyaya Ishvara Pranidhananani Kriya Yoga, of which, according to theistic interpretation of Yoga Sutra literature, the easiest thing is to surrender ourselves to God's will. Then what happens? God's will begins to work through our mind, and then it becomes almost impossible for us to do anything wrong. So, such people accumulate a lot of meritorious impressions, good impressions, positivity, good thoughts, good samskaras. That is called Shukla, the Shukla karmas. The second is Krishna. People who habitually are engaged in doing wrong things, doing harm to others, doing things which create problems for others. They accumulate a lot of negative samskaras, negativity. So that karma phala is called Krishnam, negative, undesirable, characteristic of people who are habitually engaged in doing wrong things. Then Shukla Krishnam here means mixed, both good and bad. In fact, most people belong to this category. Lot of good samskaras and lot of undesirable samskaras, bad samskaras. So, in fact, in the coming sutras will explain how these samskaras, these impressions, these impulses begin to manifest in our life, depending upon where we are, what we are. Actually, it gives us an idea of how to take care of our own actions, our own thoughts, our own words, how to preserve a sense of equanimity in different circumstances and conditions. The coming sutras will help you. So these are the three types of samskaras for those who are not yogis. That means Shukla, some good samskaras, Krishna, some bad samskaras, and Shukla Krishna, some mixed, both good and bad together. They manifest in different situations, in different ways. Now, this actually may be better explained in the light of an interesting passage from Vyasa's commentary, which is celebrated commentary. So, the sutra is Karma Ashukla Krishnam Yoginaha Trividam Idaresham. That we already explained, because the beginning of the commentary is Chadushpad Khalu Iyam Karma Jatihi. In other words, what it means, karma belongs to 4 categories. Karma belongs to 4 categories. So again, you have to remember the commentaries, translations are not so very clear. They use the word white, black, etc. But we should remember this very well. The real meaning of Krishna is cluttered, disorganized. Somebody who is terribly confused because a lot of negativity in the mental system, cannot act, cannot see things clearly. That is because of the disorganized type of impulses and feelings. So that's the meaning. And clear, those who are disciplined in their life, there's a way of disciplined, well-organized way of living a spiritual life, their temperaments become highly organized. It's called Sukla. So, Karma Jadi means a category. Krishna, Sukla, Ashukla, Krishna, Chaidi. This is the commentary. I have already explained this, so there is no means of this. These actions, this is called black and white, etc. As I have already explained. The next sentence is very important. Tatra, in this context, Krishna Duratmanam. Negativity, highly cluttered, disorganized, or papa, the Sanskrit word is papa. You can say sinful, maybe it's a very imperfect translation because the word sin as understood in the Judeo-Christian context, that is precisely not what Vyasa is talking about here. But language has its own problems. So we can say papa is frequently translated as into the word sin. Sin can mean sometimes papa, but not always. So Krishna Duratmana, Krishna Jatihi means these samskaras, these impressions, these tendencies belong to one category, that is the cluttered, undesirable papa category, Duratmanam, those who have done a lot of evil things in their life. Sukla Krishna, both good and bad, Punya and Papa, both spiritually meritorious and its opposite, mixed together. Bhigisadhana Sadhya means it is the result of interactions in our everyday life. In our everyday life, we interact with people. Sometimes we cause a lot of harm to others mentally, sometimes physically. Sometimes our words and thoughts and actions will be a blessing to others. So those actions which become a blessing to others, helpful to others, they generate the Shukla category, the positive, good category of samskaras. And those actions which create problems for others, they create Krishna category, means negative samskaras and impulses. So, Bhigisadhana Sadhya, that is the term used by Vyasa. What it means is mostly due to interactions happening in our external life. When we work in the office, when we travel, when we meet people, our words and thoughts, our actions can sometimes cause harmful results to others. Tatra Parapida Anugraha Dwarena Karma se Pracheka. Parapida means doing harm to others. Anugraha means being a blessing to others. So our actions belong to both the categories, good and also bad. Sometimes unconsciously, our words can cause harm to others. But if we practice yoga, then our unconscious actions, which may be harmful to others, will not have a binding effect on our mind. Why? Because we consciously cannot do anything harmful to others when we take to yoga life. But unconsciously we may do. But that won't have any harmful effect. It won't have any binding effect on our mind if we take to yoga. But if we don't take to yoga, then even unconscious actions can also sometimes create problems. It can become a negativity and can remain the mental system. So that actually produces good and bad. So para-anugraha means actions which become a blessing to others, a help to others, helpful to others, that create positive samskaras, shukla categories, helpful samskaras. And actions sometimes which can be a problem for others, parapida means doing harm to others, can cause negativity. So what we give here, you get back from somewhere else. In fact, it's a kind of relay, What we give in some place, we get back from a totally different person. Sometimes this happens in our life, we can see that. We may do harm to a person, and that person perhaps may not be aware of it, and we think we are very smart and clever, and then we find suddenly something comes from an unexpected corner, and then we complain, but actually we have already given that to another person and he's coming back to us, not from him but from another source. That means there is a cosmic mind. We cannot really escape it. When you take the spiritual life, we feel all the more, that's all. Those who don't take the spiritual life, they may think, oh, this man, I did not do any harm to him, but he's doing harm to me. I harmed somebody else, but not this man. But when you take to spiritual life, you suddenly see there's an invisible interrelatedness, interconnectedness. In fact, the awareness of this invisible relationship, interconnectedness, when we become aware of it, that's what happens when you take the spiritual life. That's the main difference between an average, crude person and a refined person who is interested in spiritual ideas. Because when you take interest in spiritual ideas, suddenly you begin to see something which others don't see. And we are able to see and feel the presence of an invisible interconnectedness. We feel the whole creation is connected. We may not be able to feel the connecting link, but if you take the spiritual life, you see, oh, I should not have done this harm to that person 10 years ago, because it is coming back to me from another person 10 years later. The spiritual seeker will be able to look beyond this. That's the difference between a spiritual seeker and a person who is not interested in spiritual life. A person who is interested in spiritual life is able to see deeper into things. He is able to see where others don't see anything. So that is why it is his, parapida anugrahadvarena karmasya prachayaka. So this collection of good and bad which are accumulated in the mental system, that is karmasya prachayaka, accumulation of good and bad actions. It's already there. Sukla tapaswadhyaya dhyanavadam. That is Vyasa's commentary, which I referred to earlier. Good samskaras, positive samskaras, spiritually healthy samskaras are the results of different spiritual disciplines, spiritual austerities we may have practiced either in this life or previous life. So it could be meditation, it could be contemplation, it could be reading scriptures, or sometimes, it could be some kind of doing good to others. All these are different kinds of Kriya Yoga. It's called Tapaswadhyaya Isapranidhanani Kriya Yoga. Sahi Kevale Manasi Aitatvad Abhisadhanadina Na Paran Pidayitva Bhavati. This is the long sentence in Vyasa's commentary. Now, this particular category means those who have done lot of tapa, mean spiritual disciplines, austerities, meditations, prayers, doing good to others, reading some wonderful books containing wonderful spiritual ideas. Actually, they are accumulating desamskaras, impressions at the internal level, not external level. It is in your mental system that you are practicing all these spiritual disciplines. When you meditate, it is not an external process. When you pray, it's again an internal process. It's all related to introspection, one way or other. That's why Vyasa calls it Abhisadhanadhina, means Abhi means not external. Bhi means external. Abhi means not external. See, it's just the opposite of Shukla Krishna. Samskaras or impressions which are a mixture of good and bad. They are the results of external activities. You're traveling somewhere, you're doing work in a factory, or you meet people in office, wherever it is. You engage in different activities, some of them good, some of them bad. Harsh words, evil deeds, evil thoughts, they all create Krishna, negative samskaras. Also, good words, good deeds, good thoughts, they create positive. But they mostly happen at the external level. That's why these mixed samskaras are the result of activities or interactions taking place at the external level, external world. But austerities, prayer, meditation, which help you to generate a lot of positive samskaras and impressions, they take place at the internal level. That's called abhagisadhanadhina, means they are the results of internal or introspective activities. In your own private world, you meditate. Nobody may see that. But when you do that, you are actually accumulating a huge treasure house of positive samskaras. When we read, again we are accumulating a lot of positive samskaras. When we engage in also in thought, holy, higher thoughts, that's also one way of accumulating positive samskaras. Naparan pidayitva bhavati. So it's not the result of doing harm to others. Now this shows that on the one hand, samskaras or impressions, accumulated samskaras and impressions that we have already acquired, they do influence our behavior, our character, our temperament. At the same time, we also create additional new accumulated samskaras. So we are on the one hand influenced by samskaras. At the same time, we can also purify our samskaras through good actions, through proper spiritual disciplines. This is an important thing to remember. You can find in the next coming sutras, Patanjali goes deeper into the dynamics of human character. In the next sutra, it says, Tataha vipaganugunanam abhivyaktihi vasananam. What it means is vasananam abhivyaktihi. That means. Now, the question may arise. That is a very important question. We may start thinking, not about yogis. We know that yogis have transcended both good and bad. So they cannot consciously do anything bad. And even if their good actions also do not bind them. They don't have to enjoy the results of their good actions. So they transcended both. That's called their Ashukla and Akrishna. It's called. Now what about those who are not yogis? That discussion continues now. Tataha. I mean, these three karmas, that is punya, good, papa, bad, and then punya, papa, both mixed. These are three types of activities. That's all human beings can do. They can do either good things, they can do bad things, or they can do things which are a mixture of both. So we cannot particularly call it good or bad, but may have elements of both. Now, when do they manifest? When do they actually begin to express themselves? Of course, the coming sutras will help you. Jadi desha kala vyavakitanam api anandadyam smriti samskara yoga ekarupatvad. The 8th and 9th sutras are interrelated, but still we will find out now here. Now, what it means is vipaga vipaga anugunanam. So vipaga, the word vipaga is used. Vipaga means fruition. So the point is, the results of these impressions of our previous actions belong to two categories. One is vipaka, the other is smriti, Sanskrit words. Vipaka means which are fit to manifest. Those samskaras can be experienced in this life itself. Samskaras which are the results of actions in this life. Certain things which you have already accumulated, they are already ready to manifest. Those samskaras, those vasanas are ready, they have reached a point of maturity, of fruition, they begin to manifest in this life. The second category, smriti, means memory. Those samskaras may not manifest in one life. They may require another life cycle, maybe after another life cycle. In other words, depending upon the place, the circumstances, and the time of our life, the samskaras and impressions of previous life cycles can begin to manifest. To give an example, a person who has a lot of spiritual samskaras, if the person happens to be born, let us say, in a place where there are a lot of spiritual seekers are there, those samskaras may manifest because there is a concordance, there is a appropriate combination of the presence of good samskaras in his mind plus the combination of proper place, proper situation, proper atmosphere, environment, all these can combine. But the same person may have samskaras which are not always spiritually inclined. He may have very material samskaras, non-spiritual samskaras. If he happens to travel from that place to another place where non-spiritual samskaras are likely to manifest because of the environment, circumstances, those samskaras can manifest. So, and of course, Patanjali believes, and also Vedanta believes, in the transmigration of jivas in individual souls across the boundaries of continents, culture, race, nationality, and so on. So that's what we. So here, of course, that subject comes only in the 8th, 9th sutra. In this particular sutra, the meaning is this: that is, depending upon the circumstances, the conditions, the environment, and how far a particular place is conducive for the manifestation of that particular samskaras and vasanas. Accordingly, those samskaras may manifest. But one important, maybe this is a message for our times. Look at the students of education field. If students can be, for example, exposed to places or circumstances which are conducive for the manifestation of their inherent positive samskaras, then naturally those samskaras will manifest actually. If they are, let's say, introduced to places or events, of course, great movies depicting higher ideals, spiritual ideals, philanthropy, compassion, maturity, wisdom and so on. They perhaps, the inherent samskaras in children's mind, mental system may manifest. On the other hand, the opposite also unfortunately true, which is really happening all over the world now, right now. So, actually Patanjali is actually pointing out a very interesting possibility which is very relevant and very important for our times. Circumstances do play an important role. A human being is not a creature of circumstances. At the same time, he is completely, absolutely, fully influenced by some circumstances. The great yogis may not be influenced by the circumstances. That's an important thing, because yogi is immune. A highly advanced spiritual seeker, yogi, he transcends both good and bad. So far as he is concerned, he is totally immune to the pull or the influence of samskaras, bad or good. But the normal human beings, they need an environment or a set of circumstances which actually should help them to manifest the inherent, positive, healthy samskaras. This is very, very important. And this has a great value in modern education. So, that's why, because the vipaka anugunanam, that's an important word here. Vipaka actually means fruition. That rare combination. Suppose a person has got a tendency to do good things to others, and if he happens to be, if he happens to meet a number of philanthropists, compassionate people, he may have already a lot of samskaras which are linked to compassion. He may have accumulated those samskaras maybe 1,000 years ago, maybe 20 life cycles before, maybe in 11th century AD or so. He must have been a great, good man, a man of great compassion. Then for many life cycles, he could not practice or manifest those. Now in this life, he suddenly happens to read the life of great men who have practiced compassion or philanthropy or doing good to others. These inherent samskaras will come to the surface. They connect. The opposite also, as I mentioned, I don't want to elaborate the opposite, which of course everyone knows. If you show a very good, nice person, let's say a student who has a lot of positive samskaras, but if you just show him this Terminator 1, 2, 3 horrible things, they may be wonderful things to many, but not for everyone. Now what happens, the violent tendencies, the excitement, those things which the child may have, a small little quantity, but that will come to the surface. He may have a lot of good samskaras, positive samskaras, and we don't give him a chance to manifest those positive samskaras, and we show him this terrible thing. Then what happens, he may also had a lot of Krishna samskaras, negative samskaras. They begin to manifest. That shows the importance of the right kind of environment and circumstances. That's what it means. Because mental system is like a bundle. Whatever it sees outside, it connects. When you have a lot of good things in our mind, when we see something good outside, it connects. When there are some undesirable things in our mind, when we are surrounded by undesirable negative things, they also will connect, unfortunately. Because vipaka means this, vipaka is a kind of concordance, mutual connection, mutual harmony. Just an electric plug put into the outlet, electricity flows. So they combine together. That's the meaning of tataka vipaka anugunanam eva abhivyaktihi. Abhivyakti actually means manifestation. Manifestation depends upon the fruition or maturity of the samskaras that are already there in the mental system, which happens as a result of this rare combination of samskaras within our mind and appropriate and set of circumstances which are conducive to the manifestation of the samskara within the mind. So that is the importance of the 8th sutra. 9th sutra actually takes us a step beyond that, and which is very, very famous. Jati, Desha, Kala, Vyavahitanam Api Anandaryam Smriti Samskarayohu Ekarupatvad. Jati means category. Maybe place you are born, birth. Desha means the place, the country, or the locality, the environment, circumstances. And Kala means time. So they say these are very important. When we are born in a place and that place is going through a very difficult time, and if in our mind there are some unfortunate samskaras, those samskaras will manifest. Look at what happened to Buddha. Maybe this is one example which everyone knows. Buddha was living in a palace, a happy man, a happy prince, 28 years old. One day he was taken out in a palanquin or maybe a chariot through the streets of the city, capital city of Lumbini, and then he saw a sick man, old man, and a dead body being taken to a cremation ground. So it didn't frighten him. Suddenly the Buddha in him began to manifest. I mean, the journey started there. Of course, he walked 1200 miles, something like that, all the way to Bodh Gaya, and he sat under a tree. Ihasane sushudu me shariram tugasti mamsam chavilayam chiyatuhu aprapi siddhim bhujanma durlabham naivasanat kaya matas chalishyate. He sat under the tree with a strong vow, I won't get up from the seat before I get enlightenment, even if my body perishes. Now, that incident, seeing three visions of the darker aspects of human life. I mean, dead body being taken to the cremation ground, the reality of death and old age and sickness, which actually made him to think of something beyond. And then he saw a sage who had a blissful face. So the point is, so all the innate samskaras, 542 previous life cycles, he was going through this journey, this ascent, evolution. He was born in so many species. He was born as a prince, and he was born as an emperor. He was born in so many different categories, different walks of human life. And also he was born even in the category of the animal kingdom also. But in all these life cycle, he displayed something unique, the spiritual wisdom. And that finally culminated in his leaving the palace that night. So you can imagine, because the vipaga, the karma, fruition, the maturity came. So what this shows is jati, desha and kala. Depending upon the birth, the person's life, one can travel across the boundaries of nationality, culture, race, language, everything in this journey of transmigration. We have no idea. Sometimes people may feel, I'm already familiar with this, but I'm not sure. You may be reading a great book for the first time in your life. Still, when you read it intensely, especially when you read in solitude, suddenly you feel, well, I'm not entirely unfamiliar with what I'm reading. It's almost like a revision. Not entirely, but at least to some extent, some of you may feel. The Vedantic ideas or these higher spiritual ideas, not entirely strange to you. You are not total strangers to this. That's because somewhere in sometime in some other life cycle, another country, speaking another language, you have become acquainted with that. So, but the point is, it may be different. You may be born in different life cycles, different places, different times, different centuries, but there's a continuity, and the continuity is the continuity of vasanas and smritis, samskaras and memory. Because memory connects the entire life cycle. As I mentioned, if a student who has a lot of great things, good samskaras in his character, if he is exposed to something wonderful and sublime, which he accumulated maybe in previous samskaras, living in another country, in another life, in another age, maybe thousands of years ago, but suddenly he may read the life of Buddha or something sublime, something good, suddenly it may occur to him. Or may reading Bhagavad Gita or anything, Sermon on the Mount, anything. Suddenly you may feel kind of inherent inner connection. That's because there's a continuity in terms of vasana and smriti, tendencies, impressions, and their memory. They constitute a continuous thread, a thread of continuity. Though we may be born in, there's a lot of differences with regard to the place, life, and times, but there is this egarupatva. Egarupatva means aigarupyam, means continuity, the continuous thread. The point is, what really happens is, one kind of life in one place at one time and created one kind of samskaras. Again, after 1,000 years, we are born in another place, but there is a similarity of the circumstances. Then an identical vasana or tendency may come forward and assert itself. That's what happens. So, again, sometimes it could also be the result of identity or similarity of the same circumstances. So that's why sometimes in a person's life, in different stages, you find the character or temperament sometimes undergoes radical transformations. You may reach maybe 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, suddenly take a plunge to another kind of life. And then you look back, it's almost like a previous life cycle. You feel a total stranger to your previous life cycle. I mean, you're 70 years and take to spiritual life. You may be billionaire, a lot of money, many things you did, and then suddenly something happens. You total, just to go to the opposite, polar opposite, take to spiritual life. And then after some time, when you look back, you feel, well, it was another life. When you look back to your own previous experiences before transformation, you feel a total stranger to what you were in your pre-transformation stage. This happens because suddenly you have traveled, you are connected with something else at that stage. Buddha, till 28th year, he was a prince. Perhaps there was nothing spectacular in his life, as far as we understand. He was a great soldier. It is said that he participated in so many martial arts competitions and he won in all competitions. He was supreme as a soldier, as a martial artist. We are talking about Buddha. And this man later became something else. And he must have looked back to his own early days and must have felt a total stranger to what he was before he came to Bodh Gaya. I am giving Buddha's example. This is a classic example which everyone knows about. That's why I am talking an example. This more or less happens to many people. That's why. So that's why Jadi Desha Kala Vivahidanam Abhi Anantaryam. There is this, that concealing veil is suddenly removed. Because the samskara's continuity asserts itself. Samskaras continue. You cannot block it. You may be born in another country, but samskaras will migrate with you. In fact, in Brahma Sutra, Shankaracharya, in the Badarayana Sutra, there is one sutra. It is actually a sutra on based on which there is a long debate between Shankara and Vyasa. Tadantara Pradivatto Remkadi Sambarishuktaka Prasnanirupanabhyam. It's a very long sutra. Tadantara Pradivatto. I mean, what happens when a dying soul migrates from one life to another life? Dehantar Pradivatto. There is a bhashya. When you travel from one body to another body, it's called new life. Remkhadi means gechadi, a moving, traveling. Sambarishuktaka prasnirunabhya means whether that soul is accompanied by the sukshma shariras, I mean vasana, samskaras or not. This is a sutra in the Brahma Sutras. It's a complicated sutra, I have no time to explain the whole thing. But sutra is Tantara Pradivattu Remkhadi Samparishuktaha Prasna Rupanabhya. And then this is being expounded in the light of one important passage from Chandogya Upanishad. How does a soul migrate from one place, from one species, from one category, maybe from one country to another continent, another country, another language, when he dies? How does it? Is he accompanied by all the previous samskaras, impressions, tendencies or not? The answer is, he is accompanied by this bundle of his previous samskaras, impressions and vasanas. Because there is a continuity, this harmonizing thread. That is the meaning of here. Ekarupatva means this the same vasanas continue. But may be born in different place, but vasanas connect all these different life cycles together. Now we will continue the discussion. The next session we can have interactions. Most welcome. Yeah, most welcome.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
I don't see any other hands yet, and I did not see any other questions on YouTube or Facebook, but if there are any watching live that want to ask questions on YouTube or Facebook, I will scan that after asking my first question.
Please.
You know, the modern vocabulary for these surprise connections that pop up is the word trigger. Oh, I've been triggered by this, and suddenly I'm responding in a surprising way. Is this the same concept as the vipaka, the fruition concept in the 8th sutra?
Yeah, in a way, that triggering cannot happen unless there is a degree of vipaka, fruition, fitness coming. Triggering cannot happen. Instead of being inspired by a new ideal or teaching, the person may dismiss it as something totally illogical, irrational, if there is no vipaka. The very fact that, yeah.
I do mean triggering in a positive possibility as well.
Yeah.
In other words, the stimulation of a response, whether it's positive or negative. I was thinking in terms of being inspired. Actually.
It's certainly, that's what I'm talking. So when there is no vipaka, there will not be a positive response to a new ideal. When there is vipaka, then it will triggered. You are inspired by higher ideal, because it's already there in the system, but circumstances somehow brought you together, so it connected. So that's the real meaning of vipaka.
It's surprising to me that we have this sense of the fixity of our identities, as though we know where we come from, what our culture is, and then when you encounter this system, you realize that you come as a package, that your potential is not limited by your understanding of the particular culture that you grew up in.
Yeah, into Vedanta has this genius about it. This Vivekananda referred to, because Vedanta is all about the fundamental human aspiration for the higher ideal. No matter what religion you belong to. In fact, there are many great Vedantins who cannot be strictly called religious in the conventional sense. But they're all, again, inspired by the idea of something universal, something sublime, something which is not narrow. So that inspiration comes as a result of their spiritual vipaka. Otherwise, it doesn't connect, really speaking.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the question.
Pranam, Maharaj.
Namaskar. Pranam.
Namaskar. This is something that I wanted to ask you about last week. It's actually a quote from Ramana Maharshi or Maharshi.
Yeah.
It has to do with karma and free will. And at one time in his life, his mother was urging him to come back and live with her.
Yeah.
And he made this statement, and it goes like this: the ordainer controls the fate of souls in accordance with their prablaya karma. Whatever is destined not to happen will not happen, try as you may. Whatever is destined to happen will happen, do what you may to prevent it. This is certain.
Yeah.
The best course, therefore, is to remain silent.
Yeah.
So I wonder, I think you talked about free will and karma. Based on this statement, it doesn't really leave much room for free will. Could you comment on that?
Yeah. Ramana Maharshi is talking about prarabdha karmas. So normally, spiritually elevated souls, they can actually influence and go against the prarabdha karmas, but they do not. Your prarabdha karmas are the karmas responsible for our present embodiment, our present life where we are born, what we do, what happens to us. All these experiences are linked to the fruition of prarabdha karmas. Karmas which are already started fruition. That's the meaning of prarabdha. And so, spiritually elevated souls, they are totally immune to the influence of prarabdha karmas, but they do not interfere. That's an important thing, because they are detached. They take a very detached view. Even sometimes when they fall sick, they may have yogic powers to heal their sickness, but they do not, because body is bound to follow its own laws with prarabdha karmas. Let it happen. So that's because Ramana Maharshi's mother's coming and asking him to go back to his home, and these things were not at all very important things for him. For him, there was no need of either going back or telling mother, no, I will not come back. He didn't feel it. He was taking a very detached philosophical view. So far as he is concerned, his coming there, becoming a great spiritual seeker, all this is the result of his own prarabdha karma. So also being born as the son of that lady, Ramana Maharshi's mother in the home, father, son of that particular person, father and mother, all these things are linked to the prarabdha karmas. He can watch at his own prarabdha karmas as a witness. He is totally detached, non-attached. In fact, this is the fundamental characteristic of a sthita prajna. So, dukkeshu anuddiktamana, sukheshu vigadaspraha, vita raga bhaya krodha sthitadhihi muniruchyade. They are not bothered about the dukkha or sukha, or good or bad. They are able to take a very detached, a philosophical view, like a witness, at their own life relations. That's why he mentioned prarabdhas will take their own course. It's totally detached view. That's a higher perspective of a saint. He's not worried about it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hariyo Maharaj.
Hariyo.
Maharaj, towards the end of today's talk, you were talking about how Vedanta subscribes to the view of a soul which migrates from one category or species to another country or even a language species when a person dies. And does Vedanta actually give any kind of an explanation of how this actually happens? And is this so I'm guessing this is something which is more subtle than what we experience as the material world, right? And but this kind of a subtle or probably even spiritual experience enlivens material objects as we know it, with something which we experience as life or just this living experience. So, is there anything which tells us how these ideas of space and time are transcended? When something, when karma and when samskaras and vasanas are randomly just pulled out of one part of this physical world as we know it and then gone and deposited in another part.
Yeah. Now, first of all, before coming to the real answer, I must mention one point. It doesn't mean, the statement doesn't mean that everything minutely is determined by the vasana, samskaras, etc. The big journey, it includes many stages. So frequently when a person has a strong desire for something and he has worked hard to fulfill that desire and he dies before that fulfillment comes, then he is likely to be born in a set of circumstances where he will be able to fulfill that desire if he has led a good normal life. Suppose a person who prays to God, who works hard to achieve something sincerely, and he dies before the fulfillment of his desire. Then he will be born in a family, in a set of circumstances where he will be able to fulfill his unfulfilled desire. So, and you will be born, you will have a natural inclination. That's called vasana. The natural inclination, the impulse over which we have no real control. That is the real, that is approximately what vasanas mean, putting in plain English. I can give an example from another perspective to give a clear idea of what these samskaras and vasanas are. See, Dostoevsky talks about, Dostoevsky is very important because he is arguably the greatest and certainly the most psychologically most advanced novelist the world has ever seen. So penetrating. In fact, the statement, I think is Schopenhauer, he said, not so Schopenhauer, I forget his name, one of the greatest psychologists in 20th century said, Dostoevsky is the only novelist from whom I have to learn anything in psychology. So he talks about man's natural inclination, passionate inclination to do the evil. He talks about it. Man's means not one man, the human, man's natural, irresistible, passionate inclination to do something he knows will be harmful to him, but he cannot help doing that. How do you explain that? It's actually, he captured the essence of vasana. You know what is vasana? Vasana is not something you can control. Vasana is something that operates in spite of yourself. You have no real control over that. So that's what Vyasa actually mentions, that aspect. Which means you have accumulated this sometime in your past, and your present self and effort cannot undo that at will. Why we fail to do what we want to do? Why this contrast, this conflict between what we want to do and what ultimately we are able to do? Because there is something within us who actually drives you towards doing something in a certain manner. Now, I'm quoting Dostoevsky to give a negative example, not spiritual. He's not talking about spiritual vasanas. He's talking about of course, I don't want to, historical background, that's a very important subject. You can ask later, beginning of a lecture, I'll give you. So the point is, it shows that it's not our choice. Our vasanas are there. And these vasanas are migrated with us when we travel from a previous life to the present life. So these vasanas migrating doesn't mean that every action, every word you speak in one life is determined or influenced by the vasanas. Not at all. The main human personal traits are the results of vasanas. That's what we're talking about. Now, our Vedanta talks about this is, when you have a strong vasana, means a tendency to do something good, noble and wonderful in this life. You worked hard, you prayed for it, which means you have done your effort and you also prayed to a higher divine will. So Vedanta tells you, when you are born again, you'll be born in a set of circumstances where which will be very conducive to your fulfilling those unfulfilled desires. Suchinam simadam gehe yoga brashto bijayate. In the Gita, Lord Krishna says, suppose yoga brashtas belong to two categories. Those who are higher category and those who are lower category. Lower categories are those, let us say, give an example, somebody wanted to be rich, influential, a big job, lot of money. He wanted. He could not do that. But he was very nice person, honest, sincere, worked hard, prayed to God. He'll be born and before he actually achieved that, he passed away. He'll be born in a family where he'll be able to continue his effort to achieve, to fulfill what he wanted to fulfill. So Suchinam Simadam. Simadam means rich. Because he wanted to be rich. He was born in a rich family. So Suchina means those who are good-natured, spiritually inclined. So he would be born in such a family. But there are those who are higher people who didn't care for this material success or anything, who wanted to practice meditation, prayer and things like that. And they didn't want anything else. They'll be born in the family of great yogis, athava yoginam eva kule bhavati dhimadam. And they'll be born in the family of yogis, spiritually advanced people, where they can continue their spiritual journey without any difficulty. That's why sometimes we find people who are born in families with a lot of spiritual culture, they are born in a flow. The wind is blowing, they don't have to do anything. They can float in the, and the momentum, the flow of the river, water will take them to their destination. So such people you find. So not necessarily, there are of course the opposite examples. Sometimes you find the greatest devotee of Bhagavata Purana was Prahlada, and his father was a big demon who was a big villain. But the son was such an outstanding, the greatest yogi, Prahladascha Asmi Daityanam. Gita says, among the Daityas, I am Prahlada. And Sri Ramakrishna used to go to Samadhi when he uttered Prahlada's name. He was such a great, every moment the little boy, he was a little boy, he spoke, he remembered God. Every moment was for him like a meditation. So you can find, so Gita gives one view and Bhagavata Purana gives another view. On the whole you find, what we do right now, if we do something good, we won't lose anything. And that's another. You don't lose anything. That's a message that I wanted to convey in the context of modern educational culture. If we can expose children to great and sublime, great good things, we are actually making a big deposit actually. Very valuable, creative way of spreading higher ideas. It's a great thing that we can do. Yeah. We are giving them good vasanas. There may be some good vasanas in their mind. Maybe Buddha hiding in some of the students. Maybe Einstein hiding somewhere. Socrates, Aristotle may be hiding somewhere. And if you just expose them to these great teachings, the Buddha may come out, Socrates may come out. But instead of keep them watching the Terminator 1, 2, 3, all the Buddhas and Socrates will go to the background and these terrible things will manifest. Because karma vipaka, that Patanjali is talking about. So expose them to good spiritually, culturally, ethically, morally enlightened spiritual circumstances. That will be great what we can do. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maharaj, there are some questions from the YouTube, which it's my privilege to ask of you. I think in a way you just answered them, I think, but I'll go ahead and pose the question. I mean, one thing that happens is it's fine to say, at some point, you'll be born into a nice set of opportunities.
Yeah.
But then there are people who look around them and say, where are those opportunities? My situation does not appear so optimistic. So the two questions are similar. One is, can one maintain one's good samskaras when conditions are unfavorable? Are good samskaras suppressed or destroyed by bad conditions or not? If one gathers spiritual samskaras in one life, is it necessary that one will be spiritual in the next life also? Or is it necessarily true? Or can it be that those spiritual samskaras might not express at all? And the other question is, how do you overcome negative and panicking thoughts? So you see, there is that concern that one's immediate circumstances can be crushingly negative. It's hard to see the way upward.
Yeah. So first of all, when you have a lot of spiritual samskaras and if you have to live in circumstances which are not very conducive, which are not favorable for the manifestation of the spiritual samskaras, still spiritual samskaras will help you from falling victims to the negative samskaras. And some some collection of spiritual samskaras, the mental system will always work and help us to prevent from falling into the clutches of negative samskaras. Because we feel, that won't suit me. Suddenly you don't feel at home in certain circumstances. That's because you have positive samskaras with him. and so you don't feel at home in the company of negative samskaras. So that is one thing. Again, negative thoughts, how to overcome these negative thoughts. That's the next second question.
Yes.
Yeah, for that we should not think too much about negative thoughts. We should not pay much attention to negative thoughts. And even worry about them. We should be concerned, but once we are aware of it, then we should forget them and we should try to develop positive thoughts. Negative thoughts cannot be destroyed unilaterally. They can be weakened when you increase the percentage of positive thoughts, positive samskaras. Samskaras cannot be destroyed the way we think. They will come back. The more you think about them, the more we worry about them, they get strengthened. So the best thing to do is to turn the mind towards the positive ideas, positive thoughts, positive samskaras. And slowly you find the negative samskaras will not be able to influence too much. Their ability to influence our mind will go down as we increase more and more positive samskaras by turning to the positive. This brooding over negative samskaras is very harmful, because the more you brood over them, they become stronger. Every remembrance of the negative tendencies or negative samskaras will strengthen them. You are actually reinforcing them. So once we are aware of it, forget about it, turn to the opposite angle, positive samskaras. When the negative samskaras come, don't worry, but you concentrate on positive samskaras. This slowly they become weak, they decrease. This is an important thing. No one can destroy samskaras. The process, one can only transcend. That's only for a yogi. To begin with, the first step in spiritual life is to generate positive samskaras, and that can be done only by turning our mind to the positive. So mind may not easily turn to the positive ideas, to positive samskaras, but we should listen to these ideas, read great things, listen to these things, discuss these things. That will be one way of increasing positive samskaras. The negative can only be weakened by the positive. The negative cannot be destroyed, eradicated by the positive. And once the positive samskaras increase, they become stronger, the ability of negative samskaras to influence our mind will decrease gradually.
I assume the same avoidance of negativity would apply to the way that we would view the spiritual orientation or qualities of our families. I mean, this idea that we're born into a family that's either helpful or not is besides the point, isn't it? I mean, if we're positive, then the family can be influenced.
Exactly. No, precisely. Actually, Patanjali is analyzing a topic. So in our real life, we need not worry too much about the place, time, everything. We should just focus our mind towards the positive, towards the spiritual, to creative, constructive thoughts and ideas. Patanjali is giving a very objective analysis, scientific analysis of how this happens. But one important thing, especially in educational psychology, I think this has got a great relevance in educational psychology, because children are highly impressionable. See a child, especially children sitting in classrooms, for example, they represent so many jivas, so many compact groups of samskaras, and there are many of them, and there are innumerable possibilities in their mind systems. As I mentioned, there may be a Buddha hiding one child, there may be a Christ hiding in another person, there may be a Henry Ford, there may be an Einstein, there may be Socrates, Aristotle, all possible. So, especially in modern times, when our education system becomes more and more technology oriented, and we don't pay much attention to these great living examples of higher ideas, we are actually shutting out the door for expressing higher ideas. That's why the teachings of the lives of the great spiritual teachers should be taught, because suddenly they feel at home when they read some great teachings, great ideas. It means they have already in the previous life accumulated a lot of good samskaras. They connect actually. That happens.
Maharaj, I don't know if you'll permit one more question.
Yeah.
Appeared late on the YouTube.
Yeah.
I should ask that then. What is the bridge between samadhi and prajna? Is it the right view? Is the right view that it's what's permanent and what's temporary?
What is the bridge between
Samadhi and prajna.
samadhi and prajna?
Yes.
Oh yeah, this Ridambhara prajna that we discussed, that is the result of the highest samadhi state, at least. So of course, Ridambhara prajna also will be transcended when you reach the Nirbija samadhi. So that's the highest state of Sampragnata yoga, this Ridambhara prajna. So Ridambhara prajna corresponds to the highest state of Sampragnata yoga. When that is also transcended, we reach Nirbija samadhi. That is the highest state.
The question is, what is the bridge between samadhi and prajna? Is it the right view of what's permanent and what's temporary?
Actually, the Ridambhara prajna is permanent. Once you achieve that, you never lose it.
Yes.
Because
Okay.
when the Ridambhara prajna is, when you reach that, when all other samskaras completely transcended. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank
that
you.
was my understanding of the question.
Yeah. Thank you. So thank you for the questions again. We'll continue the discussion next time. Mostly we'll read Vijnana Bhikshu's commentary on some of the sutras next time to make it more clear. Thank you. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.